Great. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending today. This is the third of the live webinar sessions for the Sassafras 7.8 KeyServer platform launch. And we have a lot of new features to show you. As you probably know, the KeyServer platform is now made up of three products: KeySight, LabSight, and AllSight. The features that we're going to show you today are all available in the AllSight product, which is our full-featured ITAM solution. Some of them are in LabSight, and I will do my best to point out which ones are and are not in LabSight. And then the KeySight product being a very specific use case for concurrent use license management actually doesn't get any of the new hardware asset management features that we'll be showing you. I'm going to jump right in to the demo, and we'll start here in Key Configure very briefly because I want to point your attention to this new imported category and talk about Chromebook, the Chromebook client. So within the Key Configure interface, if that's what you're familiar with, the big changes that you're going to notice are, of course, if you start importing or installing the Chromebook client, you'll see some of those come in. You can deploy the client using the Google's device manager, forget what it's called at the moment. And by default, the Chromebooks are going to be identified by the serial number. Within the settings of the Google admin console, you do have the ability to change that and use an asset ID field. There might be another field or two that you can choose from, but basically, you're going to see Chromebooks identified by the serial number unless you make that change. And once they come in, if we go into this device really quickly, you're going to see it's the same kind of fields and the same kind of data that we gather for other hardware. All the same fields are going to be here. Not all of them are necessarily going to get data, but Chromebook client will gather hardware details and then record logins automatically, but also be able to record usage of URLs if you've set up URL products and have policies tracking them. The other thing here is the new imported category. I just want to point your attention to it really quickly here. It is associated with the Jamf and Intune integrations that we'll talk about in a bit. Basically, any devices that come in using those integrations are going to show up in this imported category, which do not use any of your KeyServer seats. These devices won't have a client installed on them, so they don't use any of your seats. But if you come in from Jamf and you have app inventory, then they will show up in certain audit reports as packages, not products. But you can get some of that inventory of installed apps through our system as well, so that you have access to that data within our system. So that is the Chromebook client and the new imported category. So if we come to the devices page here in the web, this used to be the printers page. What you can see is printers is now a category on this page, which is called devices. And there are a number of other categories. Each category has its own fields. So if we go into a monitor record, for example, we can see height, width, physical, and width and height. For monitor fields, you're going to get different fields for projectors, different ones for cameras, that sort of thing. And then displays or monitors and storage devices connected to a computer with our client on them will automatically populate in the system here as long as audits are turned on for those computers. So if you're in one of those situations where you're installing a client on student-owned or end-user-owned equipment, you just simply turn off audits. You're not going to gather software installations, and you're not going to gather this kind of external equipment inventory in your system. For on-site computers that do have the client on them, the hard drives and monitors will show up as long as we see a unique identifier, which is a serial number, and that to prevent duplicates. And then they will show up associated with the computer they were last connected to or last seen connected to. So under categorization, we can see this monitor was last connected to this machine. So what's the purpose in having all this equipment in here that doesn't have the client installed on it? Well, the goal for the 7.8 release as a whole is lifecycle management from purchase order all the way to retirement or salvage of the equipment. So it's a single pane of glass that allows you to bring in really any IT asset from software to hardware, network devices, switches, routers, modems, that sort of thing. Any other kind of equipment, even keyboards and other small devices. Someone I talked to said they were planning on putting cables for loaner laptops in here. They've got a barcode, they've got an asset ID. They're going to drop those into the other category and then assign those with the loaner laptops, which is actually the next topic we want to talk about. Really quickly though, I'm just going to go into one of these devices again and have a look at the asset fields because there's a couple of changes here. There's some new fields, region, I think building may have been there, but region, building, room, lat, and long for a very specific location data. The owner field was here before, but on loan to and on loan until are both new fields as well that go along with the life cycle, the loaner pool management add-in, which we're about to have a look at. Last thing, if I drop into the edit mode, I just want to show you how some of these primary life cycle stages have secondary or subcategories. And you can ignore some of the silly ones there. This was just a we use for testing. But the ones that stand out or that tabbed out here are subcategories that were manually created by an administrator. And so we'll come back to that here in a second. I just wanted to show you where that is within the asset pane on a hardware device. So if we come back to extras, we are going to have a quick look at this loaner checkout extra. I'll show you how that gets installed here in a second. But on this extras page, which you may not see yet, is loaner checkout and user assets. And those are the two we're going to have a quick look at. Then I'll show you where to go to install them. And then we'll talk about some other features. So go into the loaner checkout. You can see there's 10 computers ready to loan, 7 are currently on loan, and 8 are overdue, 2 due within a week. And then there's also devices that are ready to loan and some that are on loan. If we go into settings really quickly, this is where you can set the life cycle stage that you're choosing for what devices and computers are available to loan out and which one are currently on loan. And so one of the early steps in the setup process for this is to create those new life cycle stages with the fields and the custom columns that you can do. Really quickly, I'm going to jump to this second tab to show you, if you're interested in this feature, this was just pushed out yesterday. It's a blog post. If you go to our website and under support, go to the tech blog. It should be top of the list right now. And this walks you through the feature and the setup process. So just be aware that is there if you need that. And then coming back, the settings here allow you to set up how long is a default term or length of a loan, what time of the day will it be due on the due date, and then there's a way to include terms and conditions, a URL to say an e-sign form or any other URL you might need to provide a link to end users to. The users will receive an email when they an email confirmation when they check out a computer and also when they turn one in. A couple of people have asked whether it sends reminders before the computer comes due. At the moment, it does not, but I suspect that is a feature that will be added fairly soon. And then, of course, on this email tab, you can set up an email address to receive copies of all of the notification emails that go out. So you got a second record of those as well. And then under filtering, this is where you can set up which computers are going to be a part of your loaner pool. And so this can be a two-step process if you want it to be. Let's say you've got multiple departments that have their own independent separate loan pools. Well, step one might be to drop all the loaner computers into a single division, or just work off of the life cycle stages to define your pool. And then for coming back to the main page where you have computers that are available to loan, this page will obey the scope. So you can select a division or a location for computers for one department logged into this computer, and then on another computer in another location, they can select the scope there. An alternative method would be to use account permissions and privileges to restrict access at the user level, so that this user can only see this group of computers and only have the ability to loan those out, while another administrative user would only have the ability to loan out the computers in their department. And that can be as simple or as complex as you need it to be in terms of using sections or other custom account management options. So if you decide or you think you might want to go that route, feel free to reach out. Always happy to answer questions and assist with that kind of configuration. So if I come in to check out a computer, I click 10, there's 10 computers here available. I can scan a barcode if it's got one of the visible fields here, asset ID, serial number, scan that barcode and it'll type in, it'll kind of type it out for you. And if I do a quick search for C02, I'm very quickly filtering to the objects here. So it is possible to kind of scan for a computer. In this case, I'm just going to select the machine here. And next step is to check out selected. This is another area I'm going to show you in settings in a moment. But another new feature is a script that allows you to import user details from Active Directory. So it doesn't create user records within the system as of today. That request has come through. What it does is for any user record that's already in the system, we can pull in and populate the email field, the phone number field, as well as the full name from AD. So just adds information to pre-existing user records pulled in from Active Directory. I'll talk a bit about that more in a minute. In the meantime, I just want to show you how it works. If I start to type a user's name here, it's doing a search within the database where that script has already been run, and I find there's Mark Balance. I can select his name, and then it's going to populate the email and phone number fields from that user record in the system. If you're not connected to AD, or if AD, say, doesn't have this user's phone number, I can type it in, and when I save it, it will save it back to the local user record. It's not going to push it up to Active Directory, but it will save it within the user record in AllSight or LabSight. And all of the loaner asset functionality is available in LabSight, as well as the devices page I mentioned, and the Chromebook clients as well. So far, I think all the features we talked about are LabSight available, except I mentioned TD and ServiceNow integrations. Those are not. But the Active Directory stuff here is. So if I step through this process, which I'm not going to do right now, click complete, and it's going to assign this computer to this user with the data here. Here's the terms and conditions, and if I want, I can click signature on file to add that. When I click complete, it takes me to a page that's a summary that can be printed, kind of like a receipt, and that is what gets emailed out to the end user as well from the email address that's input here. Then, when the time comes to check that device back in, I can go to things that are on loan, select the machine. Right now, I'm still filtering to small group, but select the machine I'm checking in. If there's a device I'm checking in with it, just select that, and then click Return Selected, and that drops it back into the available pool, changes that lifecycle stage back to loaner pool instead of on loan, and becomes available again to check out to another user. So I'm going to show you the user assets extra really quickly, and then we'll talk about how to add these very briefly, just so you have an idea of what that process looks like. So under user assets, I can come in and again type a username, and I'm going to grab that user. And now what I'm seeing is a user-centric list of all of the devices, computers, and software associated with this user. And then it tells me how that association has been made. So for example, this computer is associated with Mark because he was the last person to log in. It's not assigned to him in any way. Maybe it's a lab machine somewhere, but it's on this list because he happened to be the last person that logged into it. Whereas this computer, he was the last one that logged in, but his name is also listed in the owner field for that machine. And then you can see how many times we sort of demonstrated this. He's got 4 computers loaned out to him right now as well. With devices, it's a little bit different because rather than last used, this is saying that these devices are associated with this user because they were last connected to one of the computers this user is assigned or related to. So if I click to go in, I can take a look at this and I can see which computer was last connected to. So it's one of that user's machines. So that's for the devices, which could be hard drives, could be monitors, could be any of the other devices that we talked about, to include cables or charging cables or anything like that. And then software is a little bit different as well. If a user is listed in a policy that is a user-based license, then that's a directly assigned to this user by virtue of it being within a software policy. If it's in a purchase record, installation codes have been assigned to that specific user, then you'll see software associated with that user by virtue of purchase record installation code. And then if it happens to be a software policy that has assigned a license to a specific computer that is owned or loaned to that user, then it will be listed here because it has been assigned to a computer that that person is in charge of. So again, main goal here is to provide a user-centric view of everything associated with that machine or with that user. There's a quick, easy way to run a login report to show usage of the hardware associated with that user, a usage report for software, an audit report that will give you a complete list of installed software, regardless of whether usage is being monitored for it. You'll get that list of installed software. And of course, you can also print the data that we see here to get that out on paper. So we're looking at these add-ins on this extras page. And so the next question is, well, where do these come from? I don't even have an extra page. So in settings, what you will find is there is an extras tab here, and all you do is check the box and refresh the browser. So if you want to add loaner checkout, you just check that box, click save, and refresh the page, and you'll see the extras page, and then the loaner checkout extra will be here, and you can click here to add it to your dashboard, which it's already been added here, so you can open it from there. So pretty easy, straightforward stuff there. Check the ones you want to add, and they'll be added after you click save. The other related thing to talk about is some of the new scripts that we have installed. So the difference between what we call extras and scripts is that the scripts are JavaScripts. They run on the server side. They get installed on the server side. So most of them can be run from either KeyConfigure or the web. The ones that cannot be run on the web, you see, say KeyConfigure only. And extras are run on the website, installed and run on the website, so they're not accessible in KeyConfigure at all. So when we talk about the scripts, there's a few that I've mentioned, and let's talk about those first. So import computers from Intune, import computers from Jamf, import devices from Google, Intune, and Jamf. So the original 7.8 release, it looks like a couple of these are brand new. The import computers are actually, I guess these are the ones that were there. Devices are the ones that are new. But originally the idea was that the Jamf and Intune integrations were going to be for mobile devices that don't have our client installed. So again, coming from that lifecycle management or hardware asset management standpoint, the goal is how do we get all this equipment that's not logging into the server, into the system, for that asset management. And so Jamf and Intune, Jamf, of course, is iOS only. And we do now have the ability to pull Apple computers in addition to the iOS devices. Those are two separate scripts. And then with Intune, of course, iOS, Android, and perhaps whatever other equipment you've got in there as well. Jamf is the only one that can pull in the iOS app inventory. So the Intune one, even if you got iOS devices in there, we don't get that kind of inventory from Intune. Really quickly, to give you an idea of what this looks like, if I just click the settings, you can see it's some basic location authentication information, and that you have to input, and then you click to run it, and you can also set these up to run and syncs on a schedule. So if we look at the schedule, I think it's done in hours. Yeah. The other one I mentioned was mentioned within the context of the loaner checkout, which is to import user information from Active Directory. Again, when you run this script, it's going to pull in the full name, the username, it's going to match against the username. And it's going to pull in the full name, the email address, and the phone number from Active Directory and populate the local user fields. And again, you can set that up to run on a schedule. So one area where that might be useful is loaner checkout, but assigning the owner to a computer and various other user-centric tasks might also be associated there. It's not just about the loaner checkout. It is a separate script independent of loaner checkout, and the goal is to add that information to the user records. Pretty straightforward. If we go into the settings here, you see there is the AD host field. Most of the time, it's not necessary to fill that out. And then beyond that, really 99% of the time, you're just going to run with the default settings, where the primary name is the user's full name, and the email address and the username are treated as an alias. So that is the import user information from AD script. There are a couple others worth mentioning if you haven't seen them before, and those are up higher here. The gather Dell dates and gather Lenovo warranty dates. Basically, what these do when you run them, you install them, you come to, say, you come to the computers page, select a group of computers, and run those from here. And what they're going to do is go up, reach out to the Dell server and pull back the purchase date and the warranty date for the computer, so that those can auto-populate. That data can be stored with the record here in the system. And then that, of course, can then be pushed to widgets on the dashboard that can give you a chart, sort of a breakdown of computers based on their age or their warranty date range. So there are some others here. Most of them are self-explanatory for the most part, what they do. If you see something you're interested in or think you might have use for and you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. Most of these are described, I believe, in our documentation. So if you hit the help page and just go to the search bar from there, probably find most of what you need there. But of course, if you do have additional questions or need some follow-up, just reach out to us. And the last thing that I've got on the list to make sure I talked about tonight is this new columns tab here in settings. And there's a few different things you can do here. One, there are a few columns associated with hardware types and that asset pane that we looked at that are new, and some that have been there for a while but were always just text fields that you hand typed into. Now we have the ability, say for the department field in the computer table, to come in and define a preset drop-down list that users can choose from. And you can create the list here, and then you can either have the list show up and users can select or type, or you can lock it down and require that they use one of the values in the drop-down. This is something that's been requested over the years, and is finally kind of making its way in to allow administrators to standardize choices that are local to their environment, and by creating a drop-down list. The computers table has had 10 custom fields that you could give a label to forever, but we have now added the option to manage those fields here in the web, and then also devices and purchase records also now have 10 custom fields that you can apply a custom label to and use for whatever you need them for. And then finally, down here is the ability to create essentially subcategories within a list that has been there. So we've always had a life cycle stage field. It's always been a drop-down list of options, predetermined or preset options. Now you can create subcategories or additional options within those drop-down lists as an administrator. One word of caution is that while you can add and change very, very easily things that have been added, you'll notice there is not a delete button as of this moment. So don't add anything, just to kind of check it out if you don't need it. Again, you can edit it and make something useful out of it if you happen to. But if you create something that you need deleted, definitely reach out to the support department. We can help with that. Just wanted to give you that word of caution. There are a few other, probably some little things I'm not remembering to mention. But as far as the big things that are part of the release, we talked about the Chromebook client with login and URL tracking, the new devices page with the hardware categories and lifecycle management for all kinds of hardware that do not log into the system and don't have a client installed on them. The automatic discovery of monitors and storage drives connected to client machines. We looked at the new loaner pool management add-in, how to install that. That blog post, again, is the best place to go for a walkthrough of setup and configuration of that extra. We also looked at the user assets extra for that user-centric view. I talked a bit about the Jamf and Intune integration, and then just here we looked at the new fields and customization options for drop-down lists and custom field labels within the system. So again, if you've known our product for some time, you know we started out as a very small concurrent use license manager many years ago, and the product kind of grew into a software asset management tool for managing other license types, and then the ability to run discovery reports or audit reports that show you all the different software products installed on the machine was added as a product recognition service. And then along the way, of course, we're doing login tracking for hardware usage data, device and computer configuration details get populated, kind of just been expanding more and more into this hardware space. And of course, for the last year with the pandemic, we have gotten more and more requests for a way to have this single pane of glass management of all the hardware assets, especially now when things are being sent home with users and staff. So we wanted to kind of expand the system in that direction based on the user requests that have come in over the last last few months in particular. I just wanted to thank everybody for your time and attention. So, you know, we're always excited when we push out these major releases, and it feels pretty good to have so much interest and engagement with our users. So again, thank you for coming. And with that, I'll shut up and just kind of hang out and ask or see if any questions come through. So thanks again for your time.